In the last week and some change, we've had more Dragon Ball news than we've had in years. From a fan favorite Dragon Ball game being completely revived to news about the anime and potentially more than just the anime to a whole new Dragon Ball game coming out. We have so much to talk about today. Now, it started with this FighterZ announcement. Actually, it started with one a little bit prior to that, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I want to talk about FighterZ because I think this is what really reinvigorated everybody with just Dragon Ball games in general, because FighterZ, by all accounts, was dead, right? It really wasn't receiving anything. And while this is very exciting, now that we're a week out, this isn't maybe the most exciting thing here, because this is awesome. New DLC is great. This isn't where it ended. Look, they actually are doing more with this game, and they are trying to actually build up hype for this game again and actually talking about it in a way that we've not seen them talk about it in forever. Now, this has spawned a lot of memes and a lot of talks and a lot of discussions because they're like, oh, Sparking Zero's doing so bad they had to bring fighters back. And I don't think that's the case at all. But I do think that this is a really good sign for FighterZ and probably pointing to the fact that we're getting more than just Diamond Goku. I have to imagine they're not doing all of this. They tweeted this out on the 11th, and then they did this tweet on the 16th. Again, talking more about the update and everything else. This is crazy. But with all that said, Sparking Zero isn't done. If you guys didn't see this, if this somehow went under the radar, Sparking Zero is getting more DLC. Now, what could it be? I see a lot of complaints about this game, but the one thing I will give this game, and I think a lot of the complaints are almost invalid. This game has accomplished what we wanted a modern day, Tenkaichi to be. Is it missing a couple of modes? Yes. Simply because I think they put too many eggs in one basket, which was the custom mode that I think they thought would hopefully replace some of the modes that people really grew to like from Budokai Tenkaichi, like the 1 vs 100 and the more wonky story mode stuff. All of that, I think they were hoping the custom mode would replace that, and of course I don't think it did for a lot of people. But the one thing Sparking Zero does have is an insane roster. They're missing a couple of odds and ends like Super 17 and Great Apes, but let me know down below what are the to be continued characters that would get you actually hyper interested, because this game, outside of what maybe we're about to talk about in a second, has basically everything. I don't really know what DLC packs they could drop that are going to get the community really like revved up, versus say like a Dragon Ball FighterZ that has a very close-knit roster, a good roster albeit, but a roster that could easily be expanded to so many characters that are just completely non-existent in that game, including the superhero characters, including the diamond characters, including characters like Majin Vegeta, and just so many other characters that were not able to make it into Dragon Ball FighterZ roster that now maybe they will. With all that said, that brings us to our next bit of news, which is this leak here, which I guess not necessarily news, but leak, but then is going to bridge us into the news we're about to talk about. And that is info on Xenoverse 3 that I've obtained from a reliable source in Japan and can now share. Well in development, numerous delays, and some aspects have been completely redone from scratch. Graphically very beautiful. A playable version art exists. Release in 2027 or 2028. This is very far away, if that is correct, right? I say very far away. I mean, 2027 is only 2 years, 2028 is 3 years, but still, that's quite a long ways away from this time. Now, I think saying there's a Xenoverse 3 being made is like saying the sky is blue. This game and this series specifically sold incredibly well, right? These games have sold over 10 million copies. This has a very, very committed and dedicated fan base. And this is not a game that would surprise anyone to release, outside of the fact that they do just continually support Xenoverse 2. And a lot of what we've sort of come to expect out of these Dragon Ball games is that they do just kind of go on to just continually get updates for forever. Look at Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is now going to be a game that is in 2026. It will be entering its 8th year, because that game released in 2018. It'll be entering its 8th year, and it is going to be getting new content. So, and the same thing with Xenoverse. 2026 turns 10 years old, and it is getting a dating sim with Chila and Broly and new DLC and all this stuff. So that's the only way that Xenoverse 3 would feel like a surprise to anybody, is that they're still supporting Xenoverse 2. But saying that there's a Xenoverse 3 coming is like saying water's wet, basically, to me. But this is still exciting news. However, not as exciting as this, because that's leaks. This is official. A new Dragon Ball game project will be unveiled this January during the Dragon Ball Genkidama Matsuri event in Japan. This is much bigger than even just a game, because all the latest content of Dragon Ball comes together in a grand gathering. Dragon Ball Genkidama Festival is set to take place. A spectacular stage featuring Nozawa, the voice of Son Goku, with major new announcements, plural announcements, not just one announcement but multiple. Well, then when you go to the actual site itself, you're like, wait, so what does that mean? So they actually already have the schedule out here. So we have new development, super announcement, stage part 1. Then we have a new game stage, super stage announcement here. Then we have part 2. So this has new announcements. Now, granted, you know, this could be trying to read between the lines a little bit here. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say, why would they dedicate 45 minutes here, 30 minutes here, and 30 minutes here to come back and talk about the same thing they talked about here for 45 minutes? I would say a timid thing is that this is at least a new game. This is guaranteed a new game and something related to the anime, whether that be a movie, the sort of like reproduction of Dragon Ball, which has been something that's been being thrown around a lot, or the continuation of Super, or the continuation of Daima. That pretty much it's either movie, continuation of Daima, continuation of Super, or a sort of like a complete revamp of Dragon Ball, which my guess would just be a sort of Kai version of Dragon Ball, but it starts from the beginning, like actually Dragon Ball, and then goes all the way through to the end of Z. And is much faster paced, probably beautifully animated like Daima and all of that, if that is actually something they end up doing. Then we have a 45-minute stage dedicated to Dokkan, Legends, and Squadra. Obviously, with this announcement right here and with this leak right here, people immediately went to like, oh, well, it's going to be Xenoverse 3. But there's more to that story, because Lewis here tweets out once again and says some clarifications. Graphically, the game would adopt a cell shading style to be confirmed, which is awesome. You know, that's my biggest complaint with Xenoverse 3 is not how it plays. How it plays is perfectly fine. If anything, I still think Xenoverse 2 might have my personal favorite battle arena fighter from Dragon Ball. Like actually, I like Sparking Zero a lot too, but I think Xenoverse 2 is like that really good, nice mixture of everything that I like about an arena fighter. I have come to grow and love the Storm series right now as my favorite arena fighter, but Xenoverse 2, I think in terms of Dragon Ball, it probably has the best arena fighter mechanics down. The biggest thing is how ugly that game is. That game is so ugly. Legends, which again is developed by the exact same developer, Dimps, looks so much better because the models look more accurate and way better, and they don't have a sort of like 10-foot layer of friggin' oil over them. So anyways, regarding the release, we would be looking at late 2027 or even early 2028. In my opinion, it is still too early for us to have an announcement at the Inki Damatsuri or at the game's Battle Hour. So based on that, and based on the fact that they're saying that they think this is a 2027 or 2028 game, I'm inclined to probably believe them, and that this is actually a totally separate announcement. Now, what could that be? Obviously, with Sparking Zero, we know that they are more than willing to go back to previously successful titles. Now, when I say that, there are some of you that are probably going to think Raging Blast. I've looked up the Raging Blast stats. Raging Blast did not sell that well. I think it's really cool that it has garnered this very core fandom, but Raging Blast 1 and 2 combined did not sell as much, I think, as any of the Budokai series, period. Like original Budokai, not the Tenkaichi series. If I were a betting man, if they were going to go back to another series and bring that back, they would probably make a Budokai 4. And I know a lot of you guys, well, Infinite World, yeah, but Infinite World came out in 2008 on a PS2. When we were 2 years into the PS3 life cycle and 3 years into the 360 cycle. Infinite World did not sell that well as well because it was just so late into the PS2's life cycle that people sort of moved on. So I think a remake is, or not a remake, well, I think a remake is definitely on the table. They haven't really done a proper remake for any of these games just yet, like literally just going back and saying, hey, we're just remaking this game. I think a continuation of what an old series is also on the table. And I also think that a sequel to Kakarot is also obviously and absolutely on the table. I think a sequel to any of their games that have been successful, Kakarot being one of them, are on the table. And I also think that lots of things, but I also think that we could easily see a new genre here that we haven't seen in a long time, like say a turn-based RPG, since those seem to be doing well, especially if they saw the success. This would already be way more in development before Expedition 33 came out, but seeing the success of Expedition 33, a more, imagine if they'd already been working on something that was a more involved turn-based RPG with Dragon Ball that still made it sort of like action-y, but again, not something I think a lot of people would want. But I think they're being very experimental with the Dragon Ball franchise. Look at Breakers, look at Squadra. And so I've seen people that are like, well, if it's not Xenoverse 3, what could it be? I think it could be quite literally anything. And I might make a video talking about that more in depth. But at this time, if I were a betting man, I think a sequel to an already established series is probably pretty likely. That's just going to be my guess based off of the success of Sparking Zero. Despite how big Sparking Zero has become as a meme and how many people want to dunk on that game was financially and commercially successful, with our last report from that being over 5 million copies sold. 5 million copies sold in this day and age of a game is really, really good, especially at the prices they're charging. So anyways, would love to hear what you guys think the game could possibly be. Do you think it is just Xenoverse 3, or do you trust in this leak and the fact that Xenoverse 3 is real? Again, no surprise. And that Xenoverse 3 is probably not going to be the thing announced here because it is still too far away. I'll be totally fine if it is Xenoverse 3 though, because again, I think that game's going to be really good, but I could see them easily having multiple games for us between now and even Xenoverse 3's launch if these leaks are to be real. And if I had my pick as to what the anime thing is, I would pray and hope that it is just Dragon Ball Super 2, a movie and Dragon Ball Super coming back. Those are the best possible outcomes for me personally. No hate to Daima, no hate to a remake of the original series, but I just want Super to continue, and I know that's what the majority of the fandom wants, and I think that would be the best path forward. Anyways, your best path forward is this video right here on your screen if you haven't watched it yet. I'll see you guys over there in that one. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.